Tariq Ramadan, thank you for taking this time to talk with us. I'd like to talk more broadly about religion and violence. There are a number of prominent writers and intellectuals today, I'm thinking of Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris in the U.S., Christopher Hitchens, who make really an essentialist argument that religion is deeply connected to violence, inextricably connected to violence, and in fact, it's simply time that it can't be tolerated anymore. It's time to be done with it. Do you see a tendency in religion to foment violence?
No, look, if we want to get rid of violence, we have to get rid of human beings. It has nothing to do with religion, it has to do with us. We have to master our inner violence. We are all, every one of us has to do with this. But still, in every single religious text, the Bhagavad Gita, the Bible, the Quran, you have passages dealing with violence, because they are talking about human beings. They are talking about us dealing with perceived enemies or true enemies. And it's a struggle. How do you solve this? And when, for example, it comes to jihad, the people are saying jihad has to do with violence. It's exactly the opposite. Jihad is the way towards peace. But to go towards peace, you have to master the inner struggle that you can have. So the first natural state for human beings is tension. Is not peaceful. So we have to deal with this, and at the collective level it's exactly the same. So by saying that religion are nurturing violence, I think they are talking about violence and helping human beings to master their inner violence and their collective violence. But we cannot deny that some people can transform what was a mean to master towards a means to dominate, to instrumentalize.
Well, that's the irony, isn't it? Because it seems like, I would say the essence of the religions are to deal with violence, and yet so much violence, when you look in the newspapers, seems to be religiously inspired.
It's not religiously inspired, is that we are using religions when we are dealing with power, we are dealing with domination, so some are resisting and transforming a means towards an objective, or an objective towards a means, and this is really why we need, from the very beginning, to understand that there is no true religion without effort, discipline, and education. Because if you are not dealing with this, and you are confusing your religious commitment with emotions, your emotions can be blind, and it comes to violence.
Now, some of the critics of religion say that it's a different kind of education, that it's an education in believing things that are irrational, that cannot be proved or cannot be disproved, which is usually the scientific argument. It's not falsifiable. And so therefore, and this is Richard Dawkins especially, so-called moderate religion is equally guilty as extremist religion because it's a training ground for irrationality. Do you recognize religion in that?
No, not at all. I think this is an outsider vision of what religion is all about, and as you said, essentializing some religious attitudes and say, that's it, we have it here. When the people are relying on spirituality, confusing sometimes spirituality with emotion, with no rationality, these are the religious people. That's completely wrong. First, it's not this. When we talk about, there is no way to come back to your heart without using your mind. So this distinction between, rationality and belief is something which is a construction that we are projecting from outside. When you are a religious, dealing with the deep teachings of your religion, you understand that there is no way to be a true believer with a very deep faith without using your mind. Intellect is part of a deep faith, it's not the contrary. Yeah. And I think that this is something which is really important for us also to say this. We have in the Quran, but it's everywhere in all the religious teachings, use your mind to understand. And never forget, your mind is not the only faculty helping you to understand. Your heart is understanding as well. So come with a double vision, a rational vision to understand, a vision coming from the heart to give a direction. So the intellect is the light, and the heart is the direction. But we have dogmatic rationalists. So they have exactly the same features as religious dogmatists, and thinking that they are helping us to liberate ourselves from, emotion and spirituality. And in fact, they are as blind as the people who are following emotions.
Well, that touches on another aspect of it, which is the extremist dimension. So some will say, well, yes, religion is good, but the extremists cause violence. Do you think that's a fair distinction, or are the seeds everywhere of violence?
We have to come to an understanding. When we speak about religions and we speak about spirituality, we are relying on what? Many people are saying the problem is in the text or in the historical figure. Say, look, a text is a text. At the end of the day, the text is saying something, yes, you have to rely on this. But we also have to look at the readers. And this is the problem. We have a problem of interpretation. So when the people are telling me, for example, the problem with Islam is that you will never reform Islam because for you the Quran is the very word of God. I say, it's not the problem. The problem is not the source. You may come with a text written by a human being. The way you read it will give you the answer, because you can read it through a dogmatic way of understanding everything. And it happened with Marxism. Marx was a human being writing, books, and you had people with a very dogmatic mindset reading it with something which is a black and white. So my position here is to say, in the texts, the scriptural sources, they are references to violence, to historical context, and we have to deal with it. Now we have to educate the readers to be able to put things into context, to use their minds and to understand something. When you quote a verse, is already an interpretation. You are not speaking in God's name. Be careful. You are mediating a revelation through your mind. And here you have to accept with humility that it's a human being trying to understand what was coming from God.
So for a religion to evolve, to change, is that contradictory to believing in revelation?
Not at all. I would say exactly the opposite. There is no faithfulness without evolution. And if these texts are our texts of reference, are universal, it means that they should give us tools for us at the period of time we are living in this specific history, to find new solutions for new challenges. So new solutions for new challenges means to come back to the text and to promote new readings. It doesn't mean that we should transform the texts, but new answers to new challenges. How am I going to deal with the current technology, or the progress, or any kind of new discovery that we are dealing with? So I think that no faithfulness without evolution is a paradoxical statement, but is the only way to remain close to the spirit of the scriptures.
And I know you make a distinction, but I'd like you to talk about it. The principles of Islam are universal, but that doesn't mean to you that everyone should become a Muslim. Correct?
No, exactly. Some of the people around us think that if you doubt about your own values, it's the only way to be open-minded. To doubt about the values is not to doubt yourself. Doubting ourselves is something which is part of humility. It's the real spiritual path and route. I think that we have to go through this, which is really important. In a book I wrote about the Prophet's life, I'm just coming to this, that he went through this experience. Don't doubt of God, but doubt yourself, that there is something which is different here. He is the truth, but you don't possess the truth. He possesses you, and then be very, very humble with the way you are dealing with the reality. I think that we have to understand that the way I deal with the universal message of Islam, the point is what this universal message is telling me about the others. Is it telling me that I have to convert them? Is it telling me that there is only one truth and everything else should disappear? No, it's exactly the opposite. And it's much more than toleration or tolerance. It's something which is respect. And the difference I'm making between tolerance and respect is that I can tolerate you without knowing you. by ignoring you. Okay, you are here, I cannot just remove you from the picture, so you are here, I tolerate you. But respect, there is no true respect without mutual knowledge. And this is why we have a verse of the Quran, and we made you tribes and nations in order for you to know each other. This mutual knowledge is something which is really important. Why? Because out of this mutual knowledge, I'm going to know you, but not only this, you are a mirror. I'm going to know myself better.
So there are those who say that if each religion claims to be universal and to be the truth, then it's simply intellectual fuzziness to say that they must not ultimately be in conflict. And you've spoken very eloquently about why that isn't necessarily the case, but what about specifically the accusation that it's just not intellectually coherent to respect another religion if you really believe that yours is the truth?
I think that we have to go beyond this apparent, intellectual contradiction, to understand that your heart is close to the truth, and your mind is understanding that there are paths, that there are ways, that there are different, dimensions, that you cannot get it all. So, no way, and there is no contradiction. This is the only true spiritual message. Deep faith and respect towards diversity. Why? Because this diversity is helping you to be humble, and there is no faith without humility.
I'd like to talk about the process of reform because, and I'd like to use a case study you may be tired of, but you called for a moratorium on the practice of stoning, and you were challenged and said, why don't you just say it should be eliminated? And you responded that change takes time. Could you talk about that, but maybe use that as a case study for how people can move from a deeply entrenched belief or a practice?
Yes, it's a good case study, because if you don't understand the logic of this call for moratorium, you can't understand what is going on within the Islamic majority societies and even the Muslim communities. It's really interesting. There are texts dealing with it. In the Quran, you have texts dealing with corporal punishment and death penalty, and in the prophetic traditions as well. And you have in the prophetic traditions texts dealing with stoning. I say, okay, the texts are here. And I am a believer. I am a Muslim. I am a believer. I think that this is coming from God. So I have to deal with the text. I cannot just say remove. You have people to please the West. We are going to remove the verse. Say this, and the Muslims are not going to listen to you. I'm not going to listen to you because I think it's coming from the text. Now, the text is not only speaking to a blind reading, but my understanding. And understanding are what are the conditions and the context. So what I'm saying is, let us come to the text again, 3 questions, and while we are opening the debate, we stop implementing this everywhere. Not only stoning, all the penal code, death penalty, because it's fair, it's unfair now, corporal punishment and stoning. And let us open a discussion. Look, when I went to Morocco, I spent 3 hours with 40 scholars. At the beginning of the discussion, they were thinking, they even haven't read the paper I was writing on this. They say, it's coming from the West, you are a European, this is too much. After 3 hours, 38 scholars were agreeing on the point. Why? Because I'm talking from within.
And you're taking it seriously. You're not brushing it aside.
But from within. I'm not talking as someone who wants to please the West and sitting here and say this is absolutely outrageous, and we don't change anything. I think I want changes to occur.
Could I hold up a few other phrases that have these similar connotations? You've written that in the West, the idea of Sharia calls up the darkest images of Islam: repression of women, physical punishment, stoning. And also, when I hear fatwa, well, the first time I heard that was Salman Rushdie. It was a sentence of death. How are these better understood?
Yes. First, about Sharia, it's something which is even not really understood by Muslims themselves, because they reduce this to the penal code, what we were talking about right now. No, the Sharia means literally the way towards the source. So, in fact, Sharia is a way. So it's not a set of legal, prescriptions. No, it's more than that. It's the way towards faithfulness, in which way I'm just trying to be faithful to the origin, because to God we belong and to God we return. So it's the way in between belonging to Him And this is what we have to understand. And when, for example, I live in Europe or I live in the States, and I'm dealing with, I'm trying to remain faithful to the principles. And in the States, I can practice my religion. This is my Sharia. This is my Sharia. I don't have two systems and one contradicting the others, as some, Islamic groups are this binary vision. It's black and white. We have our Sharia is a structure, is a system, and the other side is the Western systems. There is no contradiction. So when I'm able to pray, my Sharia is here. When I am able to respect and to be respected, my Sharia is here. So this perception that Sharia is only in the Islamic majority countries and here we are not, no. And as you were speaking about fatwa, because of the very negative, introduction of the concept in the Western mind with the Salman Rushdie's affair, that fatwa is something which is killing, negative. No, a fatwa is a legal opinion or decision. Simply this. So, for example, I'm dealing with a new situation, for example, in Bosnia. They were dealing with, raped and they were asking, how could we react to this? We were raped, and could we keep must we keep the child, yes or no? Can we, abortion is legal, yes or no? And you have a legal opinion saying in this situation, and this was the majority scholars were saying, you can go through abortion to stop this because it was rape. And others were saying no because, so it's a legal opinion and you have different opinions, and the Muslim individual has the responsibility to listen and to decide for him or herself. So it's a very dynamic process where a fatwa is for you in your situation, in your specific situation, and cannot be exported to another one.
I feel like you're bringing us to the other side of the question we started with, which is, if religion isn't a force for violence, how is it a force for peace?
I was used to say, when I was asked about what is the objective, the main objective of Islam, I was to say justice. Now I changed this. I say, look, no, it's not true. In fact, the highest objective is peace. Because in Islam, there is salam, peace, and it's the highest level of, this perception that enter into God's peace. Enter God's peace. I was talking like this with Justice, and I was with Carlos Maruga from the Red Cross once. And we were talking about Palestine and South Africa. And he told me, Tariq, there is something missing. I said, what? He said, forgiveness. And he's right. No peace without forgiveness, because if you are obsessed with justice, you can really be very dogmatic, very unfair, because you don't forget. You don't forget about the mistakes. You don't forget about what was wrong. And I think there is no peace without forgiveness. So religions are teaching us forgiveness and all the conditions. So I really think that these are the ways towards, with the conditions towards peace. And by saying this, I think that a Christian understands exactly what I mean. A Jew understands exactly what I mean. A Buddhist. It's a universal message. Let us come to this common ground, and I think that this could help us towards this, multidimensional understanding of what it means to promote peace.
I just have one more question, which is, as we talk right now, you're prohibited from coming in the United States. As a BBC interviewer said recently, you sound so reasonable, but you keep getting banned from countries. You're obviously spiritually inspired by this. What is the gratification? What keeps you going?
I trust Him. I trust God. I trust Him through what I am experiencing, and I think I'm just trying to be consistent with this message. So this is why, for example, when I cannot go in some Islamic majority countries, because I'm criticizing, dictators and dictatorships and hypocrisy, I think that I'm not just doing it for the sake of my, personal, pleasure, or no, it's something which is deep, which is the only way to promote a dignified presence in this world. So I'm doing it because I think it's the right way to be with God and the right way to serve people. And I know only one thing: the best with God is the best with human beings. If you want to serve God, serve the people. by talking to you and reminding you of the essential of your own religion and my religion, it's a reminder for dignity and human awareness of what it means to be a believer. So I'm just trying to do this, but it gives me some strength, because I will never forget something, and I will end with this. I'm not confusing between governments and people. And coming from the States, you know, the people who are supporting and the way they were understanding that something is going on in their own country, and even from, you know, Islamic majority countries, the people, and this kind of support coming from the people and coming from people saying, yes, this is the way forward. You are maybe suffering because you are isolated sometimes and criticized sometimes, but at the end, what you get as a very strong spiritual support from the people looking for more dignity, it's much more than what you are losing. So at the end, it's something that I value as helping me to ask him to go along with me.
Thank you for talking with me, and I look forward to seeing you in New York in January.
Inshallah. Thank you.